Next, I want to explain about the wages-unemployment relationship, why are wages sticky. In the neoclassical theory of supply, wages adjust instantly to ensure that output is always at the full employment level. But output is not always at the full employment level, and the Phillips curve suggests that wages adjust slowly in response to change in unemployment. Now we're going to the formula, and this is the formula for the wage and employment relationship, why are wages sticky. And going to the figure 6.7, if there is overemployment this period, the WN curve will shift upward next period to WN. If there is less than full employment this period, the WN curve will shift downward next period to WN. Thus, changes in aggregate demand that alter the rate unemployment this period will have effect on wage subsequent periods. The adjustment to a change in unemployment is dynamic. That is it. Next, we talk about from Phillips curve to the aggregate supply curve. Now we are ready to work back from the Phillips curve to the aggregate supply curve. The derivation will take 4 steps. First, we translate output to employer. The second, we link the prices from charge to their cost. Third, we use the Phillips curve relationship between wage and employment. Fourth, we put the 3 components together to derive an upward sloping aggregate supply curve.
Langsung next lah.
Next.
Nanti cut biar kamu nggak itu. Nah.
Next, we talk about costs and price. The second step in developing the theory of supply is to link firms' prices to their costs. Labor costs are the main component of total cost. The guiding principle here is that a firm will supply output at a price that less covers its cost. Of course, firms would like to charge more than cost, but competition from existing firms and firms that might enter the industry to capture some of the profits prevents prices from getting far out. The resistance of market price to change quickly despite change in the broad economic that suggests a difference price is optimal. And imperfect information market clearing. Some economics have sought to explain the Phillips curve in a context in which market clear wages are fully flexible but adjust slowly because expectations are temporarily wrong. Market clearing is the process by which in an economic market the supply of whatever is traded is equated to the demand, so there is no left over supply or demand. The new classical economics assumes that in any given market, assuming that all buyers and sellers have access to information and that there is not friction impeding the changes. And next, coordination problem. The coordination approach to the Phillips curve focus more on the process by which firm adjust the pieces when demand changes than on wage. Suppose there is an increase in the money stock. Coordination problem can also help explain why wages are sticky downward. That is why they do not fall immediately when aggregate demand decline. Any firms carrying its wages while other firms do not will find its workers but annoyed and leaving the firms. Next, we talk about efficiency, wages, and cost of price change. Efficiency wage focus on the wage as a means of motivating labor. The amount of effort workers make on the job is related to how well the job pays relative to alternative. Firms may want to pay wages above the market clearing wage. Next, we want to talk about Alcuin's laws. And if you can see, this is the formula for Alcuin's law. In the short run, unemployment and output are pretty tightly, like according to Alcuin's law. One extra point to unemployment costs 2% for GDP. So, and next to the cost and price, and this is the formula for cost and price. So next we talk about figure 6.8, the aggregate supply curve. So 6.8 shows the aggregate supply curve implied by equation 9. This is equation 9. You see, this is equation 9, and the supply curve is upward sloping like the WN curve on which it is based. The AS curve shifts, that AS curve will shift up to AS. If output this barrier is below the full employment level, the AS curve next period will shift down to AS. Thus, the properties of the AS curve are those of the WN curve. This results from the assumption that the markup, the fixed at, and the output is proportion to employment. And this is the formula. Tell us that in A formula A, this is formula 9.
Explain about rational expectation revolution, but first I will tell the definition about the theory. So, the rational expectation theory show that individuals base on their decisions on three primary factors. First, their human rationality. Second is the information available to them. Third is their past experience. It suggests that people's current expectations of the economy are themselves able to influence that the future state of the economy will become. Using the idea expectations in economic theory is not new. In the 1930s, the famous British economist John Maynard Keynes assigned people expectations about the future, which he called waves of optimism and pessimism, a central role in determining the business cycle. However, the actual theory of the rational expectations was proposed by John F. Mudd in his seminal paper, Rational Expectations and the Theory of Price Movement, published in 1961 in the Journal of Econometrica. Mudd used the term to describe numerous scenarios in which an outcome depends partly on what people expect will happen. The theory did not catch on until the 1970s with Robert E. Lucas, Jr. and the neoclassical revolution in economics. So, there are several assumptions held by the rational expectation theory. First, individual use their ability to rationalize. So, there are several assumptions held by the rational expectation theory. First, individuals use their ability to rationalize when making decisions. On average, people hold expectations that will be fulfilled. Rational expectations are the best guess for the future. Although people may be wrong some of the time, on average they are right. People learn from the past mistakes, and values of variables are like price, output, and employment are important. People behave in ways that seek to maximize their enjoyment of life. And then people behave in ways that seek to maximize their profit. Expectation about the future inflations influence current buying decisions. Individuals create expectation based on all available information. And the last is resulting predictions are very close to the market equilibrium. So now I will explain about supply shock. A supply shock is a disturbance in the economy whose first impact is a shift in the aggregate supply curve. In the 1970s, the aggregate supply curve was shifted by the two major of oil price shocks, which increased the cost of production and therefore increased the price at which firms were willing to supply output. So, in that table, shows the real or relative price of oil. The first OPEC shock, which doubled the real price of oil between 1971 and 1974, helped push the economy into the 1973 to 1977 recession. Until then, the worst recession of the post-World War II period. The second OPEC price increase in the 1979 to 1981 again doubled the price of oil and sharply accelerated inflation. The high inflation led in 1980 to 1982 to a tough monetary policy to fight the inflation, with the result that the economy went into even deeper recession than in 1973 and 1975. After 1982, the relative price of oil fell throughout the 1980s, with particularly sharp decline in 1985 till 1986. There was a brief oil price shock in the second half of 1990 as a result of the Iraq invasion of Kuwait. The temporary shock played a part in worsening the recession of 1990 till 1991, so the recession is dated as having begun in July before Kuwait was invaded. So there are 2 points to note about the impact of the supply shock. First, the shock shifts the aggregate supply curve upward because each point of output now costs firms more to produce. Second, we are assuming that the supply shock doesn't affect the level of potential output. In that curve, the economy moved from equilibrium 1 back to equilibrium 0. The unemployment at equilibrium 1 forced wages and thus the price level down. The adjustment back to the initial equilibrium 0 is slow because wages are slow to adjust. The adjustment takes place along the aggregate demand curve, with wages falling until equilibrium 0 is reached. At equilibrium 0, the economy is back at full employment, with the price level at the same as it was before the shock, but nominal wage rate is lower than it was before the shock. Because of the unemployment in the meantime has forced the wage down, thus the real wage too is lower than it was before the shock. The adverse supply shock reduced the real wage. A favorable supply shock, such as that caused by technological improvements, move the short-run aggregate supply curve outward. It also typically increases potential GDP, moving the long-run aggregate supply curve to the right. Faced with such improvement, the central bank must ensure that the aggregate demand schedule move to the right quickly enough to keep up with the permanent increase in aggregate supply, while being vigilant with respect to any temporary overshooting. If the central bank gets it right, the economy experiences smooth growth with low inflation.
Today I'm going to explain about inflation and unemployment. Due to the Phillips curve, a relationship between the variable unemployment rate and inflation rate, when unemployment rate increase, the inflation rate decrease. When the inflation increase, the unemployment will be decreased, as you can see in the graph here. Stagflation is a term which mean to concern high unemployment rate and high inflation. As you can see in the graph here, the unemployment rate is high also, and the inflation rate is high also. Unemployment and inflation, evaluating the trade-offs. Nowadays, modern economists reject the idea of a stable Phillips curve, but they agree that there is a trade-off between inflation and unemployment in the short term. So you can see in here, and the changes between air and also the changes in inflation rate and unemployment rate.